Good afternoon, this is Xfinity Channel on Education. Hi guys,
Hello.
how are
Hi.
you?
Very good.
First question up front, where do you want to be right now?
On the beach.
In the
beach.
pub.
In the pub. In the pub on the beach.
It's a bit early.
Up on the beach. Hannes and Coral, how about you?
No, I'm exactly in the place where I want to be right now.
Wow, okay.
Yes, I am good.
In the air conditioning.
Excellent. I ask you this because we're going to talk about classroom settings today, and actually in the pub or in the bar and at the beach is where probably most of you would like to be with this heat, and probably the students as well would like to be there as well. So is it possible to take them? Can you say, hey, let's go and have a class in the park or at the beach? Let's talk a little bit about these traditional and less traditional classroom settings and how it eventually affects the learning process, if it varies at all. If so, in what way? So let me just say hello again to Rob, Wylie and Graeme Bell here in Barcelona with me. Then we have Coral Hall in Barcelona as well, and Hannes. Hannes is in Madrid.
Hello.
The place where he wants to be, Madrid. Is it hot in Madrid, Hannes?
Yes, for me, perfect.
Yeah, for you,
because
perfect.
For me, it's because it's never too hot for me.
Oh, well, you
That's
must be the only one in the world.
I'm only concerned about December that is approaching.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So let's start first with what types of settings do you think of when we talk about classroom settings?
Traditionally, classroom, like it's the four white walls and the table and
The blackboard.
and everyone
Blackboard.
facing you and out with the pointer or the chalk. Well, that's so mine
Top.
before you get started.
So
Say nothing.
classroom is still one teacher, 30 students maybe
Yeah.
in rows, and how is it for you guys? Coral and Hannes?
Yeah, I suppose I think traditionally I think of a classroom setting, it's with a board, writing the grammar on the board, all facing forwards and listening to the rules, which I don't agree with, but that's I think what springs to mind.
How about you, Hannes?
Well, you just said what I was going to say. I totally agree. Traditional classroom is classical setup with 30 students in 5 or 6 lines, and I don't think it's the best way of organizing the learning environment.
Yeah. Maybe when we think of a traditional setting, we also do we actually link it to traditional teaching?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think of lectures
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
or exams.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I just think of my French class when I was at school, and I can't actually remember speaking any French.
No.
I can remember like loads of grammar, loads of reading and writing, and that sort of stuff. But I don't really remember. There was an element, but nothing like. I remember getting to my French exam and the speaking part and being like, what bit's this? When did we go over this? And having this, trying to do some weird French accent. I just sounded like a dodgy waiter. Do you know what I mean? Because I was trying to be French. I never really heard it modelled very often.
Yeah. Yeah, because probably
Actually,
English.
Yeah, I wanted to say that the traditional classroom settings also somehow assigns the roles very well, so that the teacher obviously is the authority who knows everything, and then we all know that the worst students are sitting in the back. So we can very well see who are the most courageous and the wisest students who are facing close to the teacher, and then who are the ones who want to remain unnoticed.
It's a particular teaching style as well, right? You're reading and writing all the time, and I just think that failed me. I'm quite good at picking up languages just by being in the street and doing stuff. But in a classroom, I'm lost. I'm useless. And I was one of those guys at the back, thinking
Of course
about
you
thinking about playing football or
Yeah.
flirting with some lassie or something. I was definitely not paying attention, and that's what the classic does, isn't it?
Absolutely, but Hannes, you said that you dislike the seating arrangement. So, what can we do, even in that environment, in a more traditional classroom? What can we do to just break this
Yeah.
idea?
Sure. First of all, I would definitely reduce the number of participants. And down to, of course, ideally it would be down to 3 or 4. Then 30 people is way too much. But if I had to, then I would definitely create something like a horseshoe setup, where at least no one has a particular role. It's just everyone is facing each other. Well, that would be for me the start.
I can see that you have a blackboard. Well, it's a whiteboard actually behind you. Okay, so are you thinking of a whiteboard or blackboard when you think of teaching today? Hannes?
So is it the question for me?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yes and no. I mean, on one hand, definitely yes, because there are people who just for their visual needs, they like to be things clarified, like by writing and illustrating. But here I must say less is more. Really, as little as possible, because many teachers are tempted to project everything on the whiteboard, or even if they could go further and have their slides prepared, then you can. It's the most comfortable way to present information by just presenting a long text, and then what you do is just reading it from the table. Like this is the whiteboard. So you just read everything that's already written.
In any case,
So,
we don't have that
yes.
type of teaching. At least we don't believe in it. We believe in something much more interactive, by all means, which means that to a certain extent, the settings, the classroom settings can change and is changing now. So where is it going to? Or what are the changes that you guys see as teachers?
I did a class the other day. I went to teach a guy, and he wanted to show me off. He had his Chromecast set up.
Okay.
So he came in. He's like, "Oh, look!" He showed me how to do it on my computer. I knew how to do it, but he showed me anyway. And I was like, "No, on you go." So he was doing it in English, so I was perfectly happy for him to show me. And he had a big computer. We were at a kind of conference table, which he worked. It was his office setting. And we projected from my computer up into a big screen. And I was like, this is definitely new.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, one of the things I found really difficult about whiteboards, that when using them, is you write something and then you need to erase to make more space. And then you want to go back to using that again, and you're like, I'm writing this again.
Yeah.
The actual planning, it's a technique, it's a whole art form, or planning as a teacher to use a whiteboard. And I remember when I first started using them, it was hard. It was an actual extra part of your class planning was like, what order am I going to do this in, and what do I need to delete? And often I came into class 5-10 minutes early to actually write it, so there's no dead time. But when you use a system, like what we use, or you know, it's there for you. You can flip back like power slides.
Yeah.
And it's much easier.
So would you take your students now, for instance, even if they are teaching in their company, for instance, would you take them outside the classroom?
Yeah,
Is that
I mean,
what you're
I've done
saying?
it. I mean, this week, and you know, I've had lots of kind of last classes because we're heading towards, and either me or the students have said, "Oh, it's the last class. Can we go and do it in the cafe downstairs, or can we?"
Yeah.
Can we just go for a little walk? And you know, we're still doing the grammar that I'd planned to do, but doing it kind of on the go. You know, being out and about. I think it's and that's, I'm just saying we've done it this week, but you know, you can do that at any point, just to mix it up a little bit, right? You don't have to be there in the classroom or in an office, you know, the whole time.
I remember teaching a teenager, and because I couldn't really take her out the house. You know, I couldn't say like I wasn't responsible to take. She was 15 years old. I couldn't take her for a walk. You know, it didn't come across right. But they had a balcony, and just in the middle of the class, I was like, "Oh, let's stop doing this." And we went to the balcony because we were looking at adverbs of manner and place. and we just looked at things from the balcony. And I was like, describe things and put more adjectives in to describe the verb, and it became a more natural part of the class. I like doing that. I like interacting with the environment.
Yeah. In actual fact, I remember, I think maybe about a year ago or so, Radmila, you'll remember there was these students that were doing kind of an intensive, I think they were doing 9 hours or something like that, you know, and so we kind of had 3 teachers doing 3 hours, and so, you know, obviously you wouldn't spend 9 hours in the same place, so we'd be out about the city. I'd go and pick them up from the office, and off we'd go, and we'd go to a museum, or we'd go and have breakfast, and, you know, and it was always in English, and, you know, but he would be, you know, getting, because we live in Barcelona, you know, often if you go to a museum, they start speaking you in English rather than Spanish anyway, so it's like, right, you're going to organise the tickets or whatever, but you're going to do it in English and just pretend you're a kind of a tourist, you know, and so just being out and about, and I find that, and from what I understood, he really enjoyed those sessions because he had 9 hours solid, completely in English, out and about in the city with all the noise going on, etc. And, you know, it was a real life situation rather than just a quiet classroom with no background noise. And
absolutely. I mean, I can imagine, or I can't imagine being 9 hours in the same place trying to learn something.
No, I mean, it wouldn't have worked then. The whole kind of idea of about him doing these intensive sessions, if it was 9 hours in his office, it wouldn't have worked. But it worked because we were out and about, and like I say, we'd have breakfast and we'd have coffee, and then we'd go off to a museum, and then we'd go here, and, you know, he'd explain things about the city, and it was. I think he really.
And it's you're come across things as you come across them. You can't plan for that. Which is much, for a teacher's perspective, it's much more fun.
Yeah.
You know, because you've got to think on your feet. When I think of traditional settings, I think of here's the grammar rule. Now let's do an exercise to practice it. There's never any inductive learning from the student. They're not really working anything. You don't have time with 30 kids or 30 adults. You know, but when you've got that moving about the street. And they say something in a form that's wrong, you can fix it on the spot, and it's real. Yeah,
and then you can kind of continue to use that. You know, I was with this guy for the first 3 hours, and then there was other teachers with him after, and that 3 hours flew. But I've had classes where we've been in a room for 3 hours, and 2 hours is fine. Tops. But that last hour, both them and myself are dead. And so, you know, it obviously didn't fly, so even just being out and about, you know, the time flies, and it's a lot easier.
And Carl,
okay, we can. No,
sorry, Hannes. Yeah, continue.
No, just we can also say we can make the participants feel more alive when we change the. So it's practically impossible. The class becomes predictable. Take them to different places. To side. Like it is predictable. We are in the classroom. The structure, so as we know what's going to happen next, then already the effect taking people outside, and they see, wow, there's more light. Then when I start asking, what is different? How do you feel differently? And then they start to explain what they feel. This way they the direct effect of feeling that they're doing is actually the real life, and this brings more spontaneity to their life.
Absolutely. And Coral, I remember that your first student was actually, you guys met in a bar, right?
Yes.
How was that? Why did he want to do classes in a bar?
I think because he has studied grammar for the majority of his life in a classroom situation. And he got to the point where he wants to practice the speaking. And I think it's a lot of people have the same problem. They have the knowledge of all the grammar over several years, but they don't have the ability maybe to practice the talking. And he said, really, what I need to practice is conversation, but I need it in a relaxed environment to maybe have a beer and just to talk, and for you to correct me, to give me more vocabulary where I need it. But I really need to develop my conversation practice. And that's what we do. You know, it was like, well, yeah, we tick all those boxes. That's what I do. And he loves it. He loves the environment. And, you know, his level has improved really dramatically.
I've found it like with something with certain forms or certain grammar structures, when I present it in a classroom format, they don't seem to understand it. But when I'm in a natural setting or I'm having a conversation, I'll actually hear them using it. And it's almost like they've attached it to reality, but when you put it into a more classroom setting, they're just like, what is this? So I find it when you're meeting people in their workplace, or you get in conversation and going, you actually see them using the form. Your job is then to show them how it links everywhere else. But when you do it black and white in a bit of paper, you just get this.
Yeah.
No, I don't know.
Yeah. But it's like you just said about you learning Spanish, right, or languages in general. It's you said yeah. And I'm the same actually. That's the way that I've kind of picked up language. If I have to sit there with a textbook, forget it.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. I couldn't tell you grammatically what I'm doing, but I can get what I want to do done.
Yeah. In fact, so I've got a friend here, and she works in an English company, and she's doing Spanish classes. So a bit like we do, kind of in person. There's a Spanish girl who goes to a company and she teaches them Spanish, and so I've been meeting up with her and helping her with her Spanish homework, let's say, because it's very, very basic. And it's just like, it's not going in, and like the teacher's confusing them all with like all these technical terms, and she's like, all I want to do is just, learn as we're going along, and it's, from what I'm understanding from her classes, it's still the tradition, they're still doing it the traditional way, as in, okay, here, and we'll go through the grammar, and it's all kind of boring, and she's just like, it's not going in, I need to just be speaking and learning, and as you're going along, and it's kind of been eye-opening for myself to see her, because she's really struggling with it, and it's like...
I keep on hearing what Coral said about earlier, about pretty much 90% of the students I work with, I have this deep feeling that all of the knowledge of grammar is in there. They've had it hammered into them in a classroom, they just have not ever been able to attach it to where they need to use it. And that's where I think the reality of working with people in their environments, their homes, it's the most rewarding part, when they actually do it without you telling them, because you're helping, you're a playmaker in it.
You're just guiding them. Yeah.
Does it mean though that when you are, for instance, in a bar, when the class is in a bar, is it that you are practicing just conversation, or you still follow the class format and include more elements?
Exactly that. I'm still following the class format, and I'm still covering the grammar, etc. But it's just done in a kind of more natural way, I think.
Because sometimes students, or I have the feeling that they kind of relate class in a bar with something less formal. But in our case, you guys do prepare and follow, it's
of course I prepare kind of the same way if I'm going to be teaching in an office or in a cafe and a bar, I kind of still prepare in the same way.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of a conversation I had with a guy, and he was just talking about, he asked me how long I'd been in Barcelona for, and I said, I've lived in Barcelona for 3 months. And I'm like, but if I said I lived in Barcelona for 3 months, it would mean I'm not here. He was like, oh, the only difference is the have. He was like, oh really? I'm like, yeah. The have, and then the since is for a time, and then for is for a duration. And he was like, really? It's that simple? I was like, yeah. I didn't have to take him through what the tense was called or anything like that. And he was like, oh, that's how it works. Yeah, it's simple, have, there you go. And it's those little moments when you know as a teacher, and if you have the materials in front of you saying this is what you're supposed to teach, you can have a conversation, and in your head you're going, I know what I need to get them to cover today. And I'm pretty sure I can do it through a more natural conversation.
Yeah.
So,
okay, I would ask.
Go ahead, Hannes.
Okay. No, just that I think conversation is an essential in any learning, but also in any learning, it's important to try to extend a bit the comfort zone of the student, add some elements that yet used. But at the same time, we should never, again, no matter whether it's a traditional, less traditional, we should not stretch the students' zone too far. The student just gets confused. So we have given tasks that are difficult. They can. So this is all. So in the case of this course or class. Of course, the main idea is to skill, and then we're doing it in during conversation. But of course we are teaching things. But again, the same principle. We are not challenging too much. Just as much as it's necessary.
All right. So there is another less traditional setting, which is classes by video conference. So I remember years ago, teachers feeling quite insecure, not with technology, but how that connection would impact the learning process. How is it now, guys, for you? Do you see any differences? Of course there are, but how do you feel when it comes to teaching class by video conference?
I started most of my full-time career teaching was probably entirely online. It certainly made up more than 70% of my hours. So I became initially, oh goodness me, it was awful. But now I don't even think the difference. You know, I've been known to take the laptop and turn the camera around and walk around the office and be like, look at what we're looking at, look at this over here, you know, and it's like they're looking through my eyes. So I feel really comfortable with it, but it is daunting at first. But now, I think once you get used to it, it's just like it's technology. You step on, you get used to it.
Do you teach by video conference, guys, Coral and Hannes?
Yep.
How is
yes,
it? Yeah.
Of course.
How is the experience with you? And for your students, how do they feel about it?
Well, I think it's a challenge to the student. Me, I explained it actually last time together the technology that it's a way of getting used to the technology, and actually there is. I'm not saying there is no difference between doing something online, but I think the difference is much less significant. People still think that really understand to be able to be physically close to the person and if necessary not touch the person. It's not the case because most essential is to create mental or emotional connection, and if this is done, if we are empathetic enough, we can many things. Student doesn't wish to differ, just feel the same room. We are actually way.
You can control their senses more too, Hannes, which I like. We're at a point like where technology. Sometimes you're catching up with technology and you don't have everything you need to do to use it properly. But one of the things that with the system is I need everything uploaded in order for me to work. So sometimes it hinders me because the real environment doesn't have it. But when we start to be able to share screens and share audio, then I can control all of the senses of the student. So to be able to be like, oh, you don't understand this word? Google, image, pop, or if I can think of a saying or a piece of connected speech and I can just quickly take them to a snippet of a song that they recognize and be straight away. When you have them online, when you really use technology to its most, it's actually, for me, it's even better. And also the space I have to think, because I always say to guys when you start teaching online is when you're teaching in person, it's very difficult to look at your teacher notes without the student seeing. It's very easy to do it when you're online because you've got a camera and you can have two screens up. So I was able to almost not prepare at all and then have a guideline to follow and then spend all of my time just picking up on error correction and all these things. And I found it easier.
It's true. Sometimes I'm at the office and there is a necessity for a last minute change, but last minute it's just on the dot. And there is Paul sitting and literally starting teaching, and I'm just amazed of how good the flow of the class is. And that guy was just asked to do it. So, and it seems so natural on him, pleased on him. Do you have any concerns about levels of students, or you are now confident to teach at any level?
Online?
Yeah.
No, I'm confident. I know at first. We were all very skeptical, how can we teach low level or beginners, like literally day one, class one, how can we do that online? We were all very skeptical and nervous about it and worried about it.
Yeah.
But I think as long as the material's good and you can share your screen, whatever, then no, it doesn't. If I see that I have to go and do a web class and it's first ever class, or even a phone class, I've done it now as well. Like literally day one, class one on the phone. It doesn't stress me anymore.
See, I struggle with the.
You'll get them all now, then.
Yeah, thanks for getting fair to me. Is it the video classes where I can make eye contact with someone? I can do that. I really struggle without eye contact, and that's in general. I hate talking to people on the phone. So for me as a teacher, I do not like phone classes. I'll be very honest, and that's just an interpersonal. I don't know if it's about teaching technique or whatever, but particularly because how expressive I have my hands, and I have a living emoji for a face.
Yeah.
So when it comes shocking. And I need that to work with lower levels because I want to express myself and to be able to show distance.
I mean, it is more challenging. Don't get me wrong, but it doesn't. I don't get stressed for the half an hour before anymore because I know it's possible.
Yeah.
I think so long as the connection's good, the material's good, and if you do have a webcam ideally, then the idea of doing a class online.
Yes, as long as the webcam's working, I'm good to go.
Yeah, because you do have to, point down, because, words like scroll or down even, maybe they don't understand, so having the webcam
contraction.
You
want to do.
Well, yeah.
Coral, how about you? Is your teaching style kind of adapted, or does it change according to the different settings?
I think it depends for me on the student. It's less on the setting and more on the person. If they're a nervous person, maybe have less confidence about making errors, making public mistakes. I think when you're in a public situation or a setting, you have to be have a little bit more discretion, because it depends on their personality. Maybe not correct too loudly, or maybe with reading materials, you have to adapt to the setting. So I think there are situations when it depends on the student actually, and how comfortable they are in the environment. But yeah, certainly online, I think that's usually at home, and I think that's usually a lot more comfortable.
Do you find age plays into it as well, the age of your student and using technology?
Yeah, very much. Yeah, I think in regards to using technology, I think, it depends on the person. No? I mean, there are a lot of young people that find it very easy to communicate through a screen. But yeah, I'm like you, Graeme, personally. I'm very expressive, and I like to be able to communicate. I find it very difficult if I can't see the person and make eye contact, for me.
Yeah. I think a lot of it comes down, as well, to the confidence of the student as well. So I know I had a class this week with the young lad, like 17-year-old, and we were in a bar, we just had a little glass of water, and he was very happy just to chat. But I've had students who I feel maybe due to their confidence, would maybe prefer to be either in their home or in an office, let's say, because maybe they were worried about if people were listening around them, maybe they, do you know what I mean? Kind of like if maybe they feel a bit nervous to speak in English in a cafe when maybe they think everyone's listening in to their conversation. So a lot of it, I think, comes down to the student in, like you were saying, or to do in relation to their confidence.
Are they more or less distracted in a bar, for instance? In your opinion? Because there can be a background noise.
I mean, sometimes I've been in cafes and it's been super noisy.
Yeah.
But they're like, it's a bit noisy. But I'm like, but if you go to London or wherever, you're not going to be in a quiet cafe necessarily. Yeah. So this is kind of good practice for being in a noisy environment.
It's good for the ears to focus and get used to scanning through background noise.
Yeah, blocking out and yeah.
I taught a kid on I couldn't believe it. I started the class and the IT team were trying to get through to the 10-year-old kid. Oh, he's not at home, so he's going to take it on his dad's mobile.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh goodness me. So the kid was walking down the street with it on the mobile, and it was so comfortable. Just like talking, dancing, skipping, talking to other people, and I was like, okay, I have to get used to how comfortable this kid is with technology. And then we just worked with the environment. I think we started talking about, because there was a wall behind him, and I was like, Hulk smash. And then we started talking about Avengers, and it was more linked into what he was doing that day. And he couldn't see any material.
Amazing.
And we worked entirely off the environment, and it was great. Kids loved it.
Yeah.
I think I had him singing.
Well,
singing with his street.
Can you compare that
This-
with sitting in a classroom? I mean, I would
No.
prefer, I don't know, 100 times better this version, this option. Are parents reluctant, or they're kind of fine with it?
I think they're quite game. No, the parents are quite. I think they're quite like. I think anything. I think the parents as well kind of want to stay away from the traditional, because they get that in school anyway, right? They get the traditional sit-down grammar textbook. So they're probably looking for something a little bit different. So something like that to go hand in hand with the education they get in school is probably what a lot of parents want for their kids and
That's
teens.
what I get too.
Yeah.
And so they, when they actually see it, they're like, oh, this is cool actually, like, and they really.
I've had reference from other parents because I was teaching a kid, the same 15-year-old, and I said, "Oh, what are you doing at school? I want to marry it up." And Mum was like, "No. She's doing all this boring stuff at school. Just practice the classes with you."
Yeah.
And she was getting better, and as a result, I got referrals and got kids from the class.
Absolutely.
Because that's what the parents want. They're like, this didn't work for me when I was at school. I'm presuming it's probably not going to work for my daughter, so I'm going to spend money on you to make sure they can talk.
Yeah. One of my students is a 13-year-old teenager, and it's exactly. I mean, she has a very, very good level of English anyway. But the parents are like, look, stay away. Like, you're not here to do the whole traditional grammar. You use her iPad if you want to be online, whatever. Just get her talking in English as much as possible, and you're correct, and you're doing your job, and I'm just like, sweet, happy days, how to do that.
I love it.
Yeah.
Rob, is this a comment or a question? Sorry, Hannes.
Okay, well,
sorry.
Nothing else, but just when I'm hearing it, it reminds me of teaching yoga or some kind of meditation.
Yeah.
Actually, really, because when I see it this way, what we finally want the student to do is to be as much focused as possible, and then obviously when we sit students down as they do in Scottish, then it's like they don't care about how the students actually feel. They just want to concentrate, and like forced concentration is not the meditation. But regarding like the meditation, in a way that we first try to understand how the student should feel comfortable. So we know that there are different conditions that make different student feel comfortable. Once it's created this relaxed situation, then we can pay attention to the essence of the teaching, and it's particularly challenging in a noisy environment, like in a bar. Like how we can this attention, then make them focus on the topic in spite of the noise around.
It's the nicest thing
So
it's the nicest thing to say to a student, Hannes, when they ask you for a class, and then they say, "Oh, where could you teach me, or where do you want me to come to?" And you go back and go, "Where do you want to learn?"
Yeah.
I love it. Like, I've got a student who's based on her address, but every Wednesday she messages me and goes, I've got Pilates in your neighbourhood, can we meet at this bar? Or do you want to meet me in the park and we'll do it there? And every time I've met her, I've only taught her 3 times, but it's been a different location every time.
I remember Paulina had a student, and they took the class while she was walking her dog. So they were walking the dog together. Dream class for many of you guys. Okay, one last question. Where do you see yourself teaching in the future? At the beach, maybe?
Yeah, having a little drink on the beach would be ideal.
I'd like to go teaching concerts. Well, not music concerts, it's a bit too quiet.
Because you don't have to speak.
You don't have to speak. But art galleries, I'd like to go and work more with art.
Yeah.
I'm doing something on, not this Friday, next Friday. One of my students likes craft beer, and we're both going to take a bottle of craft beer and we're going to do tasting notes at the end.
Oh,
nice.
So teaching English with beer, win-win.
All you need is the dog, and then it's the dream.
Absolutely. But things like that, working with art, I like a lot.
Maybe you want to tell your students that they can learn some English tomorrow at 9:30. Am I right? Yes.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Coral?
What's up?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm thinking 9:30 in the morning. I was like,
are you coming, Graeme?
I was like, ouch, my head hurts. That's 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.
I thought it was 9:30 in the morning you were talking about.
Where's the ibuprofen?
9:30 p.m. when these guys are
9:30 at Landmass Settings.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Excellent. Free plug. Well done.
Yeah. Patricia's
Nice.
just one comment.
Yeah.
Because Patricia said, I mean, basically getting out of the class is the only way to create an immersive environment. Or using other platforms rather than just the table, chair, whiteboard, etc., which is basically what we've been saying. So thank you, Patricia.
Yeah.
I mean, 9:30. I would be a student, and if the student agrees to teach me salsa in English,
There we go.
I would. Yeah.
Excellent.
I mean, my Spanish is at its peak at 9:30 at night.
Your English not so
My
good.
English isn't so good, but my Spanish and Catalan is fluent, and then less so after about 11 o'clock. No language.
Fantastic. Guys, a great talk. Actually, the last one for this academic year, and hopefully we resume in September, the first week of September. So good luck tomorrow.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend, and I'll see you in September, hopefully.
Cheers.
Have a nice
See you
summer.
later. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.